I want to talk about today 3 challenges of originality, trying to be original. 3 challenges that come up with being an original and what that means. And then not only that, I'm going to give you 3 things you can do to move past those challenges. So I ain't going to just give you a problem with no solution. I'm going to talk about 3 challenges that come up with being an original. So challenge number 1, if you have your pad and your pencil out, fear of rejection. I got that for the number 1 thing in terms of being original is fear of rejection. Nobody wants to feel like their ideas, their creativity, something that they're doing is going to be rejected. So most people won't even attempt to try to be creative or be themselves because of that fear of rejection. And here's what I mean about being yourself. You have something that's unique to you. Only you do it, even if it's in your musical setting or just in general. There's something that's specifically unique to you. When I started creating music at the age of 15, I had my own sound then. I didn't know it. I didn't know that, hey, this is your own sound. Nobody said, hey, Jermaine, you have your own sound. I was just creating music. I was just creating what I heard, and it was my own stuff. But as I got older and I moved to Atlanta, a city where it was happening, and as I got around other professionals, this is the point that I'm getting to. As I got around other music professionals, I began to see and hear that other people were doing it different, and their sound was different. And I could never quite get that sound, and I was always chasing everybody else's sound. And so much so, I started kind of slowly getting away from my own sound. Listening to the critiques of other people, I started not trusting what I was hearing for myself, because I thought their critique meant that I wasn't good enough, or that what I had to present wasn't good enough. I had a producer, really cool producer that I looked up to at the time. He had some records that have been on major platforms and with some major artists, and he told me, he was straight up with me. He didn't cut the mustard at all. He was like, look, your drums suck. It's like, oh man, that was in the gut, but hey, I got you. He said, your drums suck, and then he gave me some drum sounds to help improve my sound. He didn't say my tracks or my ideas suck. He said, your drums suck. But for me, that translated, everything about what you're doing sucks, so you need to change this and try to sound more like that. And so that's how I internalized, because of my low view of my own stuff, my own sound, my own originality. The way I viewed it was low. Especially once I got around people who were doing the same thing as me, it started making me second guess my own stuff, my own ideas. And because I was second guessing my own ideas, I was afraid. I see a comment, I just glanced over. Charlie says, being yourself is scary. Yep. It can be scary for a lot of people when you're in the opening stages of being yourself. Let me say that. The early stages of trying to be who you are can be very scary. Now, the second point I want to make, to your point, Charlie, the second point, if you want to write something down, Fear of being different. That's the number two thing to me that's a challenge that comes with originality. And what I got with that is not the status quo. You're afraid of disrupting the norm. If you're not status quo, and that's exactly what I had going on, because my sound was different. It was underdeveloped, but nonetheless it was really good sound. And I'm not saying it in an arrogant way. It's like, no, it's God gave this to me. Whatever he created, whatever he placed inside of me is good, period. He put it inside of you. He gave you that creative thing. If nobody else is doing it, who cares? So that disrupting the norm, that number two thing, fear of being different, I suppressed a lot of my creativity for almost the first 5-6 years that I was in Atlanta. I started suppressing my real creativity because I was trying to fit the sound of what was popular, what everybody was getting, like as being a gospel songwriter and all that kind of stuff. Me trying to get song placements on all these types of things, it's like I'm writing the bare minimum of what I'm hearing. I'm trying not to step too far out because I don't want anybody to reject my song, that kind of thing. Going back to number one, I didn't want to be rejected. So I wrote stuff that I thought everybody else wanted to hear. So things that I was already hearing on the radio, I started kind of copying and pasting those ideas. And let me throw this in here for my students that are watching. There's nothing wrong with taking a model or a mold from something that's already been, but again, make it your own. That's the thing I'm like super passionate about. Make it your own. If you're gonna take an idea from somebody, don't copy the whole idea. Use that as a framework if you need it, but make it your own, because you have your own thing. You have your own unique fingerprint, and you want to be able to make the thing your own. So again, I told y'all I'm gonna move through this pretty fast. Number three, and this is one I think is gonna summarize it for a lot of people. Imposter syndrome. And for you guys who don't, or you haven't heard that term before, I'm sure many of you have, but if you've never heard that term, imposter syndrome, I wrote down some notes. I'm going to define it for you. Imposter syndrome is basically an internal experience of believing that you're not as competent as others perceive you to be. So in other words, it can be closely related to perfectionism, in which people feel pressure to perform at their absolute best 100% of the time. When they don't, they feel incompetent or anxious. If that don't summarize, I don't know about you, but if that don't summarize a lot of what I felt, a lot of the pressure, a lot of the anxiety that I felt for years dealing with that imposter syndrome, like somebody's gonna find out that you're not as good as they think you are, or whatever. I really dealt with it first with my first album, The Journey Continues. When I wrote those songs, and because I struggled, like these were my ideas, but I struggled trying to execute my ideas. And the thing about it was not that I couldn't play it, but again, dealing with that imposter syndrome. I'm listening to all these other solo bass players. This is my first solo bass record, so there's a lot of pressure. And I'm already playing at this big church and all this kind of stuff. I know a lot of the musicians in the industry. I hear the standard of music that they're putting out. So my thing is like, I don't want to come out and put something that's shabby out and everybody looking at me like, why did he decide to do a solo record? Nobody wants to feel that. So that imposter syndrome. So even when I had to play the music live, I would practice for hours and hours. My wife she can attest to this. I would practice for hours and hours on my own music. Know it, but a lot of times I would get to my shows and forget halfway through my solo. I'll forget stuff that I'm playing, because I realized now, years and years later, that I was focusing too much on trying to be perfect and not trying to make mistakes, rather than being in the moment and actually enjoying what I'm doing, having a good time, being fully present in the moment. I was thinking about people that already knew the song. If I played this part wrong, they're gonna know I played it wrong, and then I'm gonna mess up, and it's all. And of course, when that mindset starts to show rear its head, you're gonna go down in flames every single time. And it wasn't until later on in my solo career where something finally clicked. And for me personally, this is how I dealt with it. And I'm gonna give you guys 3 topics or 3 points that you can take personally for yourself to help you to kind of start breaking that whole thing. But me personally, how I dealt with it, I got back to the root of, hey, I'm doing this for an audience of one. For me, that's God, Jesus, aka, Yahweh. For an audience of one, I want him to be pleased. My approach that I took, let me give this offering to God, not a one of pressure, but it's like, no, I'm gonna give you everything that I have. I'm gonna sing praises through this instrument. I'm gonna sing praises to you, and you're gonna get the glory from it. Now, if people want to come along the journey with me and enjoy this process with me, by all means, I welcome you to come and enjoy this. And I'm gonna fully be expressive in it. And once I started doing that, I had one performance that I did, and that really changed things around for me. And once I saw how people responded, because I zoned out, truth be told, I completely zoned out, and I went into this whole thing where I'm just playing, and I'm just, I wasn't even looking at the people, and I seen the response of the people was overwhelming. I'm like, wow, this actually works. It's like I wasn't doing it for this thing, but an indirect result of me tuning out the people and playing for an audience of one brought the people into what I was doing, and the pressure left. The pressure to perform, the pressure to be perfect, that whole imposter syndrome thing, it had no place in there, because I wasn't worried and concerning myself with the people. So sorry to go all the way around the world with that, but that's my point. You can't concern yourself with what people think, even with the stuff that I'm talking about right now. I know this is not popular. People don't want to do this, especially bass players in today's modern age. You don't want to get on here and put yourself out talking about the word of God. You want to do a cover. You want to do something that people are going to like. You want to take a popular song or something like that you think people are going to respond to. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're trying to get views, trying to get likes, you're trying to grow your social media. By all means, do what you do. But at the end of it, don't lose the essence of who you are trying to gain something else. Colossians 3:23, here it is. Whatever you do, do your work heartily as for the Lord rather than for men. There you go. Thank you. So that's the point I was trying to make. Do it as for God, as rather than trying to do it for men. And to me, that personally helped me to get rid, or to continually get rid of that imposter syndrome, because I'm not really, I appreciate the praise of men when they say, hey, that's dope, man. Give the fire emoji, man. You killing, all this kind of stuff. That's cool. But I've learned over time, through experience, through letdown, I can't be swayed by the opinions of others, because the same people that's putting you up on this video will come back and tear you down on the next video that you post. So here are some things that I think you guys can implement that will help you to start kind of breaking that thing of trying to be like somebody else, or not fully being yourself. Maybe you're not trying to be like nobody else, but you're not fully walking in who you are and being who you are, and allowing people and allowing us to experience who you fully are. Number one, change what you believe by changing your self-talk. You have to be aware of what's coming out of your mouth concerning you. I talked about this many, many times before. We believe what we say. Even the things that you hear other people say, like you hear sermons and that type of thing, and it's like call and response. The pastor or somebody has you to repeat what they just said to make sure that you got it. Because when you hear yourself say it, you're more likely to believe it than when you hear somebody else say it. Subconsciously, when you say it, your brain starts looking for the answer of the very thing that you're saying. So you create this thing in your mind subconsciously that you start looking for the thing that you're saying. And if it's not there, you'll start to create it. Or if you're saying on the opposite, something super negative, I always mess up. Or some people say I always screw stuff up. I'm a screw up. I mess everything up. And your subconscious starts looking for things to affirm what you said. So every time something happens, what you've been saying to yourself comes back up. Or saying things like I've said to musicians many times before, saying things like I suck. Oh man, you're not being, and that's part of that imposter syndrome. Not being able to take a compliment because you feel like if people knew that you really struggled trying to play something or trying to put this thing together, whatever it is you do, whether it's you're playing, whether it's you doing something on the job, you can't take the compliment because you feel like, oh man, it ain't really good enough. All those different things. So you start telling yourself that stuff. So regardless of what other people say to you, you're talking louder in your own head. It's like, man, that was dope. Oh man, that sucked, man. And I'm guilty of it still. I'm still working through it. So the things I'm telling you is not something that I've fully gotten over, but I'm way further out of the woods with it than I used to be. So you have to change your self-talk. And once I start changing my self-talk, it's not that now when people give me compliments, it's like, oh yeah, man, I know I killed that. No, it's not like that. But it's like I'm able to receive what people say a lot better and just let it be that and give the glory to God. Like, oh, okay, man, thank you. Glory to God. I really appreciate it. And I get text messages or messages, and man, you're amazing, you're this, you're that. It's like, I don't believe all that hype, but I appreciate it. Glory to God that you see something in me that you think is worth celebrating. So I can land it there and still keep a humble mentality about it, but not start believing my own hype. So there's a fine line, I think, between even that. There's always room for improvement. And if I did something worth talking about, something that was good, well, man, to God be the glory. I'm glad that y'all like it. I enjoy it now. I'm able to listen to my own stuff that I create and actually listen to it as a listener and enjoy it from the standpoint of just, man, that's good. And it's not being arrogant. It's not, just pumping my own, self up. But it's like, oh, I really enjoyed that. And I think it's just giving yourself necessary credit. Number 2, in terms of turning things around for you, create situations that force you to be original. Story of my life. All these things I identify with 100%. Create things that cause you to be original or an original. You're already an original, but create things that force you to bring out, for lack of better words, that originality of who you are. Like, for instance, YouTube for me was one of the key things I feel like that helped me to get over my imposter syndrome, forcing myself to at every level. I've talked about this once before when I did the Jermaine Morgan TV interviews. I would bring on bass players and drummers and people like that I looked up to, and some of these people intimidated me, but I forced myself to feel that intimidation and do it anyway. It's on camera, it's being recorded. You have to execute. I struggle with that perfectionist nature. I have struggled with it because you want everything to be right. And again, that's stemming from that imposter syndrome or vice versa. And so dealing with a perfectionist nature and something is being captured and you can't redo it, it's like that can create a lot of anxiety, because what you're hearing, you're forcing yourself to be okay with what you just did. And like, you're not really okay with it. But if you practice forcing yourself to be okay with something, not saying you're trying to put out stuff that's shabby or not your best, but you have to be okay with releasing things, putting out records. For me, if I wanted to, I could be one of those people that I work and perfect until I think it's perfect, and then I put it out. Like, no, I have to learn how to be okay with the idea that I had in that moment at that time, and understand if I need to go back and redo it at a later date, I can redo it. Now, I'm going to give it my best effort. I'm going to work my skill up to where I want it to be so I can present this thing at my highest level. But I also understand that it's not always going to be perfect, and that's okay. Getting to the point where I can say, you know what, it's not perfect, but that's okay. And so now I present this thing knowing that it's not perfect, but it's okay. Like, not okay as in mediocre. It's okay. Like, I gave it my best effort. This is who I am. This is what was real in this moment. Like the grooves and motivation stuff. Like my technical difficulty with the mic this morning. I'm a perfectionist, so that bothered me. But at the end of the day, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. So being able to put myself in situations where I produce constantly, over and over again, I'm holding myself to the fire. I'm producing this thing, whether or not people show up. I'm going to give my best, whether or not people acknowledge it or not. And it has nothing to do with other people. It has everything to do with me moving forward my own originality, regardless of how other people respond to it. Last one, find ways to add value to others with your originality. At the end of the day, this is one of the most pivotal things for me, finding ways in my own creative space. In Genesis 1, I think it's either Genesis 1 or Genesis 2. I think it's 2. Genesis 2, when God created man, you had to go back and read it yourself, Bible scholar. But one of the things he talked about, let man have dominion. But rule, subdue, have dominion. My point that I'm making with this, when he created us, one of the things, a few of the things that we were told to do was have dominion. Now, if everybody is on earth is trying to dominate the same thing, we're going to have some problems. We're going to bump some heads. So that means everything about us that he created and put it in us is unique to us. We have our own unique fingerprint, which means we have our own unique zone. What they say, your own, stay in your lane. You have your own individual unique lane that you can dominate, whether it's your area, whether it's the culture, whatever. But you have a specific area that you can dominate, that you can have dominion over, that's unique to you. But if you don't figure out and unlock what that is for you, then you're missing an opportunity to dominate in your area. There's something unique about you that only you do. Even if a lot of people do it, they don't do it the way you do it. 6-point-something billion people on the planet all have hands, all have fingers, but none of us have the exact same fingerprint. Imagine that. So if all of us are created uniquely and we don't all have the same fingerprint, that means what we do here on this earth is different. The impact that we make is different. I'm not supposed to be like all the other content creators that you watch online. So I think once we become confident about who we are, what we have to offer, and try to offer as much value to people as we possibly can. How do we give value to people? Make them better. What do you have that can solve a problem for someone else, and for lack of better words? What do you currently have within your reach? What do you do? What service do you offer that can solve a problem for somebody else? If you're trying to figure out, how do I add value? What problem do you solve for somebody else? Not just always looking for you to be the one to come up or whatever. Now, some of those things, problems that you solve, might create a business opportunity for you to reap some benefits, because you still got to eat. But at the end of the day, what problem are you solving? Which means whatever I'm charging you for this particular service that I'm doing, I'm going to guarantee you that you're going to get 10 times the value of whatever it is I'm giving you. So let's say on my the average course on my website is like maybe $59 or something like that. But with the information you learn on this course, I know from experience, because I'm doing the very thing for the course that I'm creating. If you learn this content, this has the potential to make you 10 times over what that course cost you to just learn this particular skill. I know from experience. If you learn this information, you're gonna make from your gigs, from being booked for certain things, because you now have this skill under your belt, you're gonna make 10 times over whatever you just paid for that. But if we only look for the cheapest, and we only look for things to add us value but never add any value to anyone else, you're missing the point. You're missing the whole point. You have to know that the thing that you're giving to somebody is gonna make their life better. That don't mean you charge for everything. This is free. But I know the information that I'm sharing is gonna make your life better. So by adding value, I do something for myself. I help myself to be more original and to look for more ways to add more value to people. So it's like this, what's the recycle symbol? It keeps going around and around. And I keep coming up with more and more ways to be creative, more and more ways to be original, more and more ways to add value to other people, which makes me more creative, which makes me more original, which makes me add more value, more creative, more original, more value. You see that circle, it continues and it continues, because I'm not just thinking about me. The originality is just me being me. But the result of the originality is I begin to add value to other people. So anyway, in a nutshell, that's pretty much it, guys. I just wanted to give these nuggets to you guys, and hopefully you wrote those things down. Hopefully that's going to be really, well, I don't know, hopefully to it. It's going to be really helpful to you if you apply it. If you apply it. Just with any of the courses on JermaineMorgan.net, shameless plug, any of the courses, content and material that I create, it's helpful to you if you apply it. If you look at it, watch the videos, okay, that's cool, and move on, that's not helpful to you. If you don't try, if you learn it and don't use it, it's not helpful to you. You have to apply it. Take what you've learned and put it to use. Simple.